What's a good word, everyone? It's your boy DKB here. I just want to say thanks for all the support. The channel's been steadily growing, and the number you see below, you can drop a text, shoot a voicemail, any ideas, topics, collabs, etc. you guys want to see. I'll include them in future videos and live streams, and I'll catch you again. Be easy. What's a good word, Jets fans? It's your boy DKB here, and we're very close to training camp being here. Pads on, press coverage, trench play, tackling. I can't wait for it, but I was watching the new season of Quarterback on Netflix, right? Had Jared Goff, it had Kirk Cousins, and it went through Joe Burrows. But I wanted to hone in on Jared Goff because one of the interesting pieces about this whole conversation that has been happening with Justin Fields and those that want to rave about him and feel like the hype is adequate for the player that we were able to get, or that we should be extremely cautious and this is going to be just another tale of a quarterback that's come in and wasn't capable of getting the job done for a litany of reasons, right? But looking at that show, there's a couple of things that stood out, and then it also made me want to dive just a little bit deeper into kind of the origin stories for both of these players, if you will, because we've heard Jared Goff be a reason why we should be excited about Justin Fields as another player that's had to suffer being traded to another franchise and being looked at as maybe the savior and all of these other things, which just up front, I don't think that should be Justin Fields' story, right? We're not handing him the keys to the Ferrari. We're not labeling him as a savior or as a franchise quarterback for us. This is very much so a prove-it deal, and even if he achieves success in year one with us, you can definitely make the argument that going into year two, that's also going to be a prove-it deal, right? Essentially, you're saying you were able to finally find a footing in the NFL in year one with a ideally more stable situation. Now in year two, back it up. Prove it again, right? Let me show that you have a level of consistency to you. So with that said, there's a couple of things that stood out to me watching that Netflix documentary, right? The first thing, and again, this is all tying into Jared Goff specifically right now, there was a ton of excitement around it, right? From the Lions perspective, you've seen a ton of videos about Dan Campbell and him glowing about being able to essentially go out and steal a former number one pick, and one that's achieved a lot of success as well, which is also a pretty significant difference between him and Jared Goff, but we'll dive into that in a minute. I think there's a level of excitement with us as well. Dan Campbell, Aaron Glenn, probably two sides of the same coin, if you will, from like a media standpoint, right? It's not a guy that's bouncing off the walls or anything, but they know how to hype a team up. And so where I think you can make an argument that Dan Campbell and company looked at Jared Goff as maybe a closer equivalent to being able to actually give the keys to him and saying that we can have success here, as opposed to with Justin Fields, you're saying, let's figure out if we can do everything that we're saying we want to do, right? Aaron Glenn's made it no secret. He wants to win. He wants to win now. He's talked about developing with his coaching staff, and he's put a lot of pressure on themselves to be able to go out there and accomplish things right out of the gate in a situation that you can probably argue is maybe not as bad as what the Detroit Lions were dealing with coming in, right? At least when they brought Jared Goff on and all that kind of stuff. But nonetheless, some of the other things that stood out, obviously the new foundation that was being built for each of these different quarterbacks. Jared Goff, obviously the offensive line ahead of him, but adding in, having an Amon-Ra St. Brown, being able to have Laporta out there, being able to get Jamison Williams and do all these things, you can see them kind of revamping that same playbook with Justin Fields, utilizing the GoPros, right, when it comes to breaking down practice, when it comes to being able to try to speed up not only the developmental curve, but some of the issues that everybody can easily identify, like how he goes through his progressions, making sure protection calls look good, all of these different elements. Resilience is going to be a huge token, right? You've heard about this pretty consistently from Aaron Glenn as kind of like a motto or really the focal point of being a Jets player, right? The core DNA, if you will. And Resilience to me isn't just being able to say that you got through the other side of something, right? Because if that's the case, there's plenty of NFL players that never really amounted to a ton in the NFL ranks. But resilience is being able to go through a downward period, or some kind of spiral, some kind of tremendous roadblock, but ultimately you found a way to go above and beyond, right? You found an answer to that situation. And so that's what's to be determined here with Justin Fields, whereas Jared Goff, he's already been able to figure that out. But looking at their situations, Jared Goff, former number 1 overall pick, immediately a vast difference, even though Justin Fields went 12th overall, I believe it was. But when you look at the situations they went into, the Rams for Jared Goff, he had Jeff Fisher and then ultimately John Fassel as his coaching introduction. Fields had Matt Nagy. Nobody on either side that you would say is an offensive mastermind, innovator, or respected offensive mind, right? But Jared Goff was able to find some immediate success with that, whereas Justin Fields, he struggled. Then you go into the transition, right? Actually, let's take it back a little bit. When you look at just their tenures with their immediate franchises, right? Or in Justin Fields' case, I'll throw in the Steelers in there as well. Jared Goff, over his first 5 seasons, 41 wins, considering these are all 16-win seasons. Very elite number to have, right? Also, we can't forget that he reached the Super Bowl in that same span time. So he's made good, right? He goes from Jeff Fisher, John Fassel to having Sean McVay. So he gets a budding mastermind to help him out, make things extremely easy for him in terms of being able to play quarterback and have success. Also gets a couple double-digit win seasons sandwiched in there as well. And then you get that weird trade after losing the Super Bowl where they felt like they can figure out things by going down a different path. In Justin Fields' case, he goes from Matt Nagy to Matt Eberflus, and then he ends up getting Mike Tomlin, right? So the differing situation there for him is he's still never been able to be around a offensive-oriented individual that's well respected around the league or has been able to at least go out there and prove something, right? Mike Tomlin's the coach closest thing to his best opportunity to show what he could do. You're expecting Mike Tomlin to, of course, put together elite defenses as usual, but also he's going to offer a level of structure, a level of accountability that maybe hasn't been there, of course, from his previous stops. And so when you look at it on paper, you say, all right, there's enough stuff going on here, right? Arthur Smith, the OC, there's going to be a focus for the ground game and being able to put together hopefully something that makes passing for him a lot easier because you're expecting an above average to elite ground game. And there's just a lot of weird stuff that happened with him with the Steelers as well, right? A lot of conversations I'm hearing where there were, mandates that he couldn't throw to George Pickens in said situations and, just a ton of odd things about limitations and restrictions about what he could and couldn't do. So ultimately still feels like one where he wasn't trusted and really was tasked with just not screwing up, and hopefully they figured out that they can pull off wins, I guess, via field goals or rushing touchdowns. I don't know, but nonetheless, savior, all those kind of things that we talked about, not really in Justin Fields' cards. With Jared Goff, again, I think is a very different situation. The Lions immediately kind of looked at him as being this guy that we should find relatively instant success with, and that's not what happened, but they were able to increase their wins by leaps and bounds as we've seen each and every year, and Jared Goff has continued to look better and better and better, and guys will continue to develop, and the defense, you can make a heavy argument that if so many of these ridiculous long-term injuries didn't happen, they're running away with the Lombardi Trophy, right? Plus, I'm not big on nicknames, right? But Mr. Perfect and Goff off the rails, I've seen as a couple of nicknames out there, and that certain portions, certain stretches of play, they definitely fit, right? The Netflix special showed the game where he had a perfect, 18 of 18 passing on the game, and I think he had a couple touchdowns there as well. And just overall, the extremely high levels of play you can get from him, but just the consistency in and of itself. And it helps being able to move from Sean McVay to Ben Johnson as well. Whereas with Fields, again, Nagy to Eberflus to Tomlin, and now with the Jets, you're hoping Aaron Glenn, another guy that should produce an above average to elite defense, ideally, commitment to the run game, but then you pair him with Tanner Engstrand, who hopefully is like a Ben Johnson light or Ben Johnson equivalent, even more ideally, to help him out. And I still just can't help thinking overall we should really be pumping the brakes with this Justin Fields conversation. It's one where I feel like things are stacked against him. You already have year after year after year of not really demonstrating elite level quarterback play. You have a couple of years where you had to rely on your legs either too much, or with the Steelers, right, there was certain limitations there where you couldn't do one thing or another to the best of your ability, because that's not what the coaching staff was asking you to do. And so there's really a feeling like nobody's really put together a sufficient plan for him, or nobody's trusted him to deliver on the plan that they've had. And maybe that's because, looking at the duration of what's happened during training camp for them, or looking at preseason games, or even looking at the regular season games in and of itself, and saying he just hasn't been able to pull this off at a consistent enough level. Who knows? But I'm looking forward to a ton of things with Justin Fields with the Jets, just like there's a ton of things that will probably scare me with him. But this is probably going to be the last chance for him, right? In terms of being able to honestly go out and put himself in conversations as being able to challenge for a starter, or being given the starter role and then it's his to lose. And so I think Aaron Glenn and company will do everything in their ability to make this right. But there was an interesting Jets X Factor article they put out kind of talking along these same lines. And one of the things that stood out to me was them referencing this year isn't really going to be about development for Justin Fields in a way that you normally think about it with a quarterback, right? We're not willing to risk wins or risk what we are going to do with the playbook and stuff, even though we're optimizing things for them, for the sake of saying, we'll take some losses now for the ideal gains we'll get in the future. This is, we need to win now. And so if he doesn't get with the program, we'll try to find that answer elsewhere. And Tyrod Taylor is breathing down his neck as a guy that I thought should have been the de facto starter. And then if Justin Fields can snatch it from him, then perfect. But we'll see how that pans out. So let me know what you guys ultimately think. Justin Fields, what should the narrative be for him going into this first year with the New York Jets? And how realistic do you think he can actually capitalize on this opportunity, right? Meaning, can he be looked at as the starting quarterback in 2026 without feeling like there's going to be someone breathing down his neck, whether that's Tyrod Taylor returning as a backup, whether that's investing in a high draft pick, etc., etc. And I'll catch you guys again. Peace.